So in this video, I'm going to walk you through how to create a table in mySQL. So essentially, once you've set the default schema, you can do anything that you want inside of a query tab. If you need to open a new query tab, just go to File, New Query tab. But I'm assuming you've done all that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a table. Now let's say that I wanted to make a song table. So what I do is I first say the word create. You'll notice that for SQL-specific words, they're always going to be capitalized. Okay, so I'm going to create, what am I creating? I'm creating a table. So I just say create table, and then I give it a name. Now you can call this song, you can call this track. It's kind of up to you what exactly you do. So I'm creating a table called song, and I know that a table is made up of columns. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and open up a parenthesis, and I'm going to come down here and I'm going to close the parenthesis, and in SQL we essentially end our lines with a semicolon. So this entire create statement for this table is one single line. Even though it spans multiple lines in the text, that's not how mySQL interprets it. So we use one semicolon to end this entire statement. Now within inside of my song table, I'm going to have a variety of columns. So the way that I do this is I essentially type out the name of my first column. So I'm going to have a song ID, and I'm going to use the int data type for that. Now, it's important to note that there's a variety of different data types. I'm going to hit the high points of the data types that you'll commonly come across. But once I've done that, I'll go ahead and I will show you a list of the common SQL data types. So the ones you'll commonly come across, I'm using integer right here. The int data type is essentially for integers, whole numbers in other words. You'll also commonly come across the varchar. That stands for variable length character. Varchars are commonly used when you have text of different length. Similar to that is the char data type. Char stands for character. And character is a fixed length data type. You most commonly use that for stuff like a middle initial. You'd have a char length 1. You also could come across that pretty commonly for things like looking at a state abbreviation. That would be char length 2 and stuff like that. You'll sometimes see a boolean character. It's a fun one to say. And essentially what the boolean does is it allows you to have either a 0 or a 1, a true false, or something like that, where there's two possible values. And then finally, you commonly come across the double. Now double is similar to int in that it stores numbers. The difference is that with a double, you have both a size of the double as well as how far over the decimal point is. So you have a decimal as the main difference there. Okay, so I didn't want to go off on that too much, but I do think it's important to talk a little bit about data types within SQL. For further information, I strongly suggest you take a look at the W3 School's SQL tutorial. They have all of the data types listed out by the different versions of SQL, or the different implementations of SQL rather, including mySQL like we'll be using in class. You can see all these different data types. Again, I covered the ones that you'll actually come across pretty frequently, but there's a lot of other data types you could use. So I'll leave that to you to read when you get a chance. But for now, let's go back and finish creating this table. So we have a song ID. We know that the song ID is going to be unique for each and every song. So I'm going to go ahead and just set it as the primary key. All I have to do that is just say primary key when I'm creating that column. Okay, so just like I did there. Now I get to create my other columns. So essentially I comma separate these. They go inside of the parentheses for my create statement. I'm going to need a column for title. Now I know that title is going to be text. I don't know how long it's going to be, so I'm going to specify that it's a varchar. With varchar, inside of parentheses after it, you can actually specify the maximum length. For me, I'm going to go ahead and set the maximum length for this to 255 characters long. It can be smaller, but it cannot exceed 255 characters of length. So then I put a comma, I go to the next line, I'm going to create a table for artist. Now, like the title, I don't know how long this is going to be. So I'm going to go ahead and make this also a varchar because it is going to be text. And I'm going to set that length to 255 characters for the maximum. That's not the minimum, that's the maximum. Okay. Once I've done that, I know that songs can be included in an album. So I'm going to make a column called album. I'm going to set that to be a varchar of, again, a max length of 255. So we think about the important things about a song. We have the title, we have the artist, we have the album. Songs also released at a certain year. And we want to keep track of that year. So I'm going to create a column inside of this song table. I'm going to call it release year. And the data type that I'm going to use for that is an integer. Because I know that years are integers. They're a whole number. I don't have to worry about a max length or anything for that. I can just leave that as the int data type. And then finally, we want to think about the genre of this song. So to do that, I'm going to go ahead and have a genre column. I'm going to use the varchar data type here. Just to shake things up a little bit, I'm going to assume that genre is a little bit smaller than the title, the artist, and the album. And I'm going to set the max length of this varchar for genre to only 100. Okay. Now, once we have typed all this in, we essentially have created the first little bit of how we can use this. Now what we have to do though, is we have to execute this. So far we've done nothing. So what I want to do is I want to select the statement that I want to run, which in my case is going to be this create table. I want to select that, and we have two options for executing. What I always recommend is that you execute the statement. You do that with the lightning bolt that has the cursor on it. Don't just use the lightning bolt. That's going to execute the entire SQL query. So go ahead and use that, and I'll show you why. Because once you've executed it once, you can go over to your list of schemas here, hit this refresh, and you can see that you have your song table created. Now, here is what happens if you do this where you just execute the entire script. Okay. Notice we get an error. And the error is that the table song already exists. We already have a song table. Now we can resolve that by highlighting what we're going to be running and using the lightning bolt with the cursor to only execute the statement that we've selected. The other thing we could do is we could drop the table. So I could come over here, I can say drop table song. Make sure that I spell that correctly. And I can execute this, and now I no longer have the song table. So I'd have to recreate it before I could do anything with it. In the next video, I'm going to cover how to insert data into tables. But I hope that that was something that you enjoyed doing, creating your first table in SQL. Have a great rest of your day.